Hi everyone, welcome to our live event. I'm Brenda K.B. Anderson, and this time I designed a cute little project that features the very popular retro daisy motif here. This is like a granny square that has a flower built into it. It's very fun to work up. And this project, or this particular stitch pattern, it can be a little bit tricky. Well, let me just put it this way. It's going to really help to watch this video. If you just read a pattern, it can be hard to figure out where all the stitches go, but that's why we love the magic of video, you guys. That's why I love teaching in this way, because you can actually see what I'm doing and I can explain things, and it just, I feel like video is worth a gajillion words. So, not to scare you off, this is a very fun project. It's definitely approachable for an intermediate crocheter, maybe a little tricky for a beginning crocheter, but you can always go back and watch things and rewatch things and slow me down. And of course, because it's a live event, if you guys have any questions as we're working our way through, definitely put those in the chat and I'll try to answer them during this live event here. So this is just a little bag that I designed featuring this stitch pattern. I knew I wanted to use this stitch pattern, and I wanted it to be a project that was very doable, for those who just want to try out the stitch pattern, and also something useful. It has a little magnetic closure in it, and if you've never used one of these before, it's a very easy way to keep your bag closed. You don't have to do any sewing. It just uses prongs to fasten it in place. And I do have a link in the pattern download in case you're interested in what these look like up close or exactly what this is. But you can definitely substitute this with another kind of snap, or you could even make yourself a little loop and put a button on the front, or you don't even have to have a closure if you don't want to. It's a pretty long bag, so your stuff will probably stay in there pretty well without that. This also features the thermal stitch, which we are using for the strap of the bag, and that really cuts down on how much this stretches. If you guys have ever made crocheted straps before for bags, they tend to stretch out quite a bit, especially if you put heavy things in your bag. And this thermal stitch, you can see it's very, very thick. It's like you're making two layers all at once, and it just doesn't have, it has a little bit of stretch, you can see here, but it eventually stops stretching out. It's not going to get all stretched out later. So that I find to be a very good stitch pattern for making bag straps. And I have started using them on lots of different types of bags, and so I'm excited to show you guys that here. So let's just talk a little bit about the materials you're going to be needing for this project. So when I designed this, I really wanted to be featuring a project that looks great by using up people's scraps. I love using scraps, I love combining colors together, and I just really like the idea of using what you already have. And I know for a lot of people, they like dishcloth cotton, they like making washcloths, dishcloths. And so I wanted to feature something where you could use up your little odds and ends of that. Excuse me. So that's what we're doing in this project. You could, of course, change up the color blocking that's happening here. We have one color on one side, another color theme going on the other side. And then I've got this, bringing in the pink again on the inside. There's some pink here. In the pattern, I actually tell you exactly how much yarn I used of each color. If you want a bag that looks similar to mine, then I tell you, yardage requirements specifically for each color that we used in this bag, and then I tell you which color to use where. But I really meant this to be more of like an example of how you can, make the motif, and then you can use whatever little odds and ends you have for the top and the bottom and the strap. And you don't have to worry about changing colors specifically when I say to, except with the exception of making the flower. You'll want to be changing colors in the order that they're listed in the pattern for that. Otherwise, it might not look like a flower. All right. So you're going to be needing some worsted weight dishcloth cotton yarn. I do have specifically the colors that I used, the exact amounts, and the brand and all that stuff is in your download, your free download. And the free download is basically a complete pattern. It's got all the written instructions, it has abbreviations, definitions, some little helpful photos, and then this chart that I made, also which I will be using to teach from during this live event. So because I know some of you are visual learners like myself and you enjoy having the charts, so I did that for you guys. But if you don't like the charts, that's okay. It's got written instructions throughout. You don't have to look at the chart in order to work through this pattern. But it does get a little wordy, as you can see, because we have to, well, you'll just see as we get into it, but there's a lot of working behind this or pulling this back and then working in this spot. It's a little bit more of a descriptive pattern. So it does help to have the chart. I do want to call your attention to 2 little typos that I found this morning. Here in round number 6 on page 8, so page 8, round 6, right in the middle of those brackets, it says single crochet in each of the next 19 stitches. It should say 13 here. Okay, so cross that out and put 13. And then there was one more little typo in the strap. It says chain 5 to start out with, but I changed that to a chain 4 to make the strap just a little bit narrower in case you don't have quite as much yarn in that color. So we have a chain 4, and then towards the end of row 1, it says single crochet in each of the next, it used to say 4 stitches, now it should say 3 stitches, and then you have 3 stitches across. Now, this one is not that important because if you make your strap 1 stitch wider, it's just gonna be an ever slightly wider strap. It's not a big deal. You don't need to worry about changing that if you want the wider strap, but I just wanted to reflect the strap that I have in the photos for this, okay? Because the first strap I made actually was wider, and then the strap that I made for the photos is just a little bit narrower. All right, so you'll need your pattern download. I am gonna be going through, all of the steps, but once we get into this just single crochet section at the bottom and the top of the bag, I'm not going to be showing every single round of that. I'm going to be more like talking you through that part. So you'll need this for stitch counts and when to change colors if you want your colors to look like mine. But I am going to be concentrating more on this flower square at the beginning because this is the part that I feel like most people will need a little bit more help on. It's just a little bit less it's a little bit more of an unusual stitch pattern. So we're going to be focusing mostly on that, and then I'll talk you through the other parts of the single crochet, and then I'm going to do a demo of how to make the thermal stitch strap and how to assemble everything. All right. Okay, so you need some yarn in various different colors. You will need at least 3 colors because you'll need the center of the flower petals in the background. And you could use the background for the whole rest of the bag if you wanted to, or you could, use the petal color for this top and the bottom. You'll just need at least 3 colors for this bag because otherwise your flower isn't going to really show up. And but you can use many more colors than that. You could do little stripes. You could also stripe the strap. If you just have like little tiny balls of yarn like these, that would be fine for most of this. You do need a larger amount for this background color here. So just keep that in mind. All right, and like I said before, I do have the exact yardages for all these parts, plus I actually put yarn weights in there, like not the CYC yarn weight, but I mean like how many grams it actually weighs, in case you have a ball of yarn and you want to check and see how much yardage you have there. So that'll give you a good guess as to whether you have enough. All right. Oh, we've got some hellos. We have a good morning from the thumb of Michigan. Awesome. I love Michigan. I have relatives there, and I go there at least a couple times a year. Oh, thanks, Sandy, for the compliment. And we've got a good morning from Stacy from Iowa. Oh, I'm glad you liked the bag. Hi, guys. All right. Let's get started working on this flower motif, the daisy, retro daisy flower. So I'm going to start out with yellow as my center, and we're going to make an adjustable loop. You can, however you like to start working in the round, you can, do that. If you like to do the chain 3 and slip stitch into the first and then work into the ring, you can do that. Or you can make your magic ring or adjustable loop, however you prefer. This is how I like to teach it. I just I draw a little loop on the table, then I flip that loop over on the strand connected to the ball, then I place my hook. That's a little curly there. Then I place my hook underneath that center strand, put my finger here where everything crosses, and then I just chain 1. And I'm going to tighten that up just a little bit here. Then I like to just flip my loop just a half turn like this so that I can work over 2 strands instead of 1. And then I'm ready to go. But you can make your adjustable loop however you like to make it. All right, so we're going to start with 6 single crochets into our loop. Oh, and I should mention I'm using a G hook, which is a 4mm hook, but use whatever hook you need to in order to get a nice firm gauge with this fabric. You just want to have a fabric that isn't going to get all stretched out when you're, if you put your phone in your wallet and whatever else, that can be kind of heavy. So you just want to make sure it's a nice firm fabric. All right, so we're going to start by working 6 single crochets into our loop. So we'll insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. There's the first single crochet. We're going to do 5 more. Actually, we start out with 8. We started with 8, sorry. Usually I start out with 6. I was on autopilot for a second there. So we're going to start out with 8 single crochets into our loop. So we've already done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Now I'm going to pull on that and close up that little center there. And now I'm going to, I don't need to join, I'm just going to start working in the very first single crochet of that round, which is here. And I'm going to do 2 single crochets in each stitch. So 1 and 2, 3 and 4, 5 and 6, 7 and 8, 9 and 10, 11 and 12, 13 and 14, 15 and 16. Okay, now I'm going to fasten off, and I really like to do an invisible join at the end of my round because it looks smoother, but also because it helps me make sure that I know how many stitches there are around that circle. Sometimes when you just slip stitch and fasten off, then it's hard to tell if like where you slip stitched, if that counts as a stitch, or if your slip stitch itself counts as a stitch, and it just gets a little confusing. So I've been doing this a lot lately where I do an invisible join at the end of my round. So all you need to do that is you just cut your yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail, and just pull it right through. Thread that onto your needle. And then you can see, here's my next stitch. We're gonna skip that. Here's the following stitch, and I'm going to place my needle underneath both loops of that stitch. And I'm going to pull on it until this strand right here looks like the length of a stitch, right there. And I'm going to go back in from where I came from, and I'm going to go underneath this loop and then the loop just below, and I'm going to pull that until it looks like a stitch. Okay, so that stitch we just made is directly above the stitch we skipped. So we still have the same amount of stitches, and it looks very neat and tidy, and it's just easy to see how many stitches that there are around this circle. Just makes it a little bit easier when you're working the next round to know if you've got the appropriate number of stitches or not there. So I'm just weaving in my ends right now, get them out of the way. I'm going to weave in this end as well. Okay. There we go. So there's our center, and now we're going to pick up the next color of yarn. So we're going to be starting with the background color. So what I mean by background is not the petal color. So in this case, we would be starting with a light green. I'll grab the light green here. And let me just bring in the chart for a second here. So we've already worked these little black plus signs. Those are our single crochets. And now we're going to start, so that was rows 1 and 2. Now we're going to start with row 3, which is right here. Row 3 begins with something that I called a joining double crochet or a starting double crochet. And so what that means, and you can just, if you want to, just insert, pull up a loop and chain 2, and then don't count that as a stitch, you can do it that way. But what I like to do is I will add a slip knot to my hook and just pretend that this is anchored here. I'm just going to hang on to that little yarn tail, and then I'm going to yarn over. So if you don't hang on to that, it's going to spin around like this. So you kind of have to just hang on to that yarn tail. So yarn over as though you're going to do a double crochet, and then just go ahead and do a double crochet. So you insert your hook there, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through 2, and yarn over and pull through 2. And there's your first double crochet. If you don't like doing that, you can always just insert your hook like that, pull up a loop, and you can chain 2. I wouldn't count that as a double crochet. I mean, you can if you like, but then you have to keep track of that. I haven't counted any of those beginning taller chains as a stitch in this pattern because later for certain areas you can't really count it as a stitch or it doesn't look quite right. So throughout, those beginning chains are not counting as a stitch. Okay, so we're going to yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So that's going to count as our first double crochet, and we're not counting this chain here as our double crochet. Now we're going to make another double crochet into that same spot. So we yarn over, insert, yarn over, pull up, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Then we're going to chain 2, so 1 and 2. We're going to skip the next stitch here in yellow, and we're going to make 2 double crochets in the next stitch. So there's 1 and 2. Then we're going to chain 2, skip the next stitch, and do 2 double crochets in the following stitch. 1 and 2. Chain 2, skip the next stitch, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. Chain 2, skip the next stitch, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. Chain 2, skip the next stitch, and 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. Chain 2, skip, 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. Chain 2, skip the next stitch, and 2 double crochets, 1 and 2. All right, so we should have a total of 8 groups of double crochets and 16 double crochets. Okay, so here's one group, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Then we're going to chain 2, and we're going to make a slip stitch into the top of that first double crochet, which is right here, to join. Okay, and then I'm just going to elongate that loop, but you can also take a stitch marker and place it in that loop. You just don't want this to unravel, and we're going to ignore this for a minute, and we're going to bring in our third color. So I'm going to be using orange here. And again, we are going to begin with that joining double crochet or starting double crochet. So we're going to place we're going to place the slip knot on our hook. This is, you just are going to be joining your yarn as you did just previously at the beginning of the previous round. So however you like to do that, I'm going to place that on my hook, and I'm going to yarn over, and then I'm going to insert into the stitch before where I first joined my yarn last time. So let me pull this back up. So this is the beginning of there's my ending tail, right? So this was the beginning of the round. I'm just moving one stitch to my right. If you're a left-handed crocheter and you crochet the opposite way, then you would be starting in one stitch to your left. So I'm going to insert and make a double crochet right here. And when I make this double crochet, I don't want to catch this in any of my yarn overs or anything. I just want to push this out of the way. Okay, so we're going to yarn over, and we're just inserting under the yellow. See how we're pushing that green out of the way? It's not going to get trapped. So yarn over, bring up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So there's our first double crochet. And we're going to do a second one in that same spot. So there's our second double crochet. Again, we still have the green just pushed to the back like that. Then we're going to chain 2, 1 and 2. Then we're going to skip to the next open space, which is right here, the next open stitch, and we're going to make 2 double crochets there. So 1 and 2, chain 2, skip to the next available stitch, 1 and 2. This is round 4, by the way. Chain 2, skip to the next available stitch, 1 and 2, chain 2, skip to the next available stitch. We're just going to keep doing this all the way around. And chain 2. Oh, good morning to Felicia from North Carolina, and good morning to Vanessa, and hi to Belle from Massachusetts. I'm glad you're back. And hey, Molly, let's see, could you mix acrylic and cotton yarn for this project? Some of the bag made with acrylic yarn and other parts with cotton yarn. I think so. As long as you have a pretty tight gauge, I think it should be fine. And honestly, you could do the whole bag out of acrylic if you had wanted to. It may stretch a little bit more. I would expect it's going to stretch a little bit more with an acrylic than with this cotton. Cotton yarn doesn't stretch hardly at all, and that's part of the reason that I like making bags out of it so much. So you can expect to have just a little bit more stretch with the acrylic, but this is, as long as you stitch it up at a pretty dense gauge, you should be fine. I think it would work just fine. And you can tell once you start working on, you get a little ways into it, you can kind of tug on it and feel what that fabric is going to be like. I really do think it would be fine though. I've made lots of granny square acrylic bags before, so I think it'd be fine. Okay, so we're finishing up with our last group of those 2 double crochets. So we've got 1 and 2 here. We're going to chain 2, and then we're going to do a slip stitch to the very first double crochet of the round, or of round number 4. So there's our slip stitch. And I'm going to elongate that loop just so that it has less of a chance of unraveling. You can also put a stitch marker in it if you like. And we're going to move this over and out of the way because we're going to switch back to the green color at this point. So we'll put our hook back into our loop. And let me just bring you in here to show you what we did. So the green on my piece is being represented with the blue stitches here. So this is where we started row number 4. We did those, and you can see the chains are back, they're kind of faded looking, but that's just so that you can see the other stitches that these double crochets. So we did 2 stitches in green, 2 post stitches in green, then we chained 2 in green, sorry, they're not post stitches, they're just double crochets. 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets, chain 2, 2 double crochets. Okay, so we're just looking at the blue all the way around this chart. And you can tell which color you're supposed to look at by what color the number of the beginning, that the beginning of the round is. So this is round number 3, you're looking at the blue stitches, and you're just kind of ignoring the red. So then round number 4, which is the one we just did, that was what we did in orange. We started here, and then we chained 2, did 2 more double crochets, chain 2. Okay, so we're just looking at the red stitches around. I know it can be a little bit confusing, especially if you're not used to charts. It is very hard to chart out the stitch pattern though, because you have like a layer on top of another layer. And I hadn't actually seen another charted version of this. I'm sure it exists out there, but this is not a very common chart, I think, for people to basically represent with a chart. It's not a very common stitch pattern for people to represent with a chart just because you're trying to represent 2 different layers. So that is what we're looking at here. You're just paying attention to the color That's at the beginning of the round. So now that we've finished round number 4, we're going to go to round number 5. So you can see that's in blue, so we're going to be working that up in green. We're going to start with 2 chains just for our beginning chains, and they're not going to count as a stitch, meaning we're not going to work into them. We don't count them as double crochets. We're just chaining 2 to get up to that height. And now we're going to do 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches, but we're going to be working around this chain right here, around this chain space. We are going to be catching that chain in our stitches. So we're going to yarn over and we're going to insert, we're going around. It really helps to take your hook and just kind of put it underneath that chain space and then find that green stitch, that double crochet right there. And then we're going to yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Okay, we're going to do that again. So yarn over, insert, so we're going around that orange, trapping the orange and working into that stitch from the row behind. And there's our double crochet. And this time we're chaining 3 in between. So we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we're skipping over to the next group of double crochets in green. So as we're working our greens, we're working around the oranges, but we're only working into the green stitches, if that makes sense. So we're trapping these orange chains, but we are looking for those green double crochets to work into. Okay, so we're going to do 2 double crochets, 1 into each of these 2 stitches. So 1, and here's the second one. And we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3. There's a double crochet. And here's our next double crochet. And chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Moving on to the next 2 double crochets. Double crochet here, and a double crochet into the next double crochet. And chain 2, 3. So we're moving on to these next 2 double crochets. So we're just making sure that we're trapping that chain 2 of the orange color as we are working these stitches into the row behind there. One, 2, 3. There's a double crochet and another double crochet. 1, 2, 3. And just make sure that all the orange, the loop and your yarn tails are out of the way. There's a double crochet here and a double crochet here. And we're going to bring all that orange stuff to the front because we don't want to trap it when we do our slip stitch. So we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to do a slip stitch in the top of the very first double crochet, which is right here. And then we'll elongate that loop. Then we're going to pick up the orange loop from in front. Put that back on our hook. I'm going to pull this little yarn tail to the back. There we go. Okay, and then we can just push the green out of the way to make the stitches in this round. So we're working into our orange stitches. We're going to chain 2 to start. That doesn't count as a stitch. That's just to get us up to the correct height. And here we are in our chart, round number 6. So we're going to do 2 double crochets into each of the next 2 orange stitches. Okay, so here's a double crochet here. 1 and 2. And then 2 double crochets into the next stitch. 1 and 2. And then we're going to chain 2. So 1 and 2 chains, and we'll move over to the next group of 2 orange double crochets. So we're going to do the same thing. So 2 double crochets here, 1 and 2, and 2 double crochets here, 1 and 2, and then we chain 2, 1, 2. Okay, we're just going to keep repeating that all the way around. 2 double crochets here, 1 and 2, and 2 double crochets into the next stitch, 1 and 2, and then we chain 2, 1, 2. Okay, so we would continue doing that all the way around, and I've got one more left here in the sample. So we have 1, 2 chains, and then 2 double crochets here, 1 and 2, and then 2 double crochets here, 1 and 2, chain 2, and then we're going to slip stitch into the top of the very first double crochet, which is right there, to join. And then we'll elongate that loop. Now we're going to switch back to the green. So I'm going to pull this out of the way. We're going to switch back to the green. And we are working on round number 7 in green. So we're going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and we're going to do 1 double crochet into the next double crochet, and then 2 double crochets into the following double crochet. And then we're going to chain 4. Okay, so that means we do, and when we work this, we're going to be working around this chain right here. So anytime you're working with the green, you need to be covering up the orange because it's sitting in front. So we're going to do 1 double crochet in the next stitch. So that's right here. There's our double crochet. And then we're going to do 2 in the next stitch. Okay, so we're encasing that orange. 1 and 2. And then we're going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to do 1 double crochet in the next. So you're basically looking for the little windows where you can see the green, because behind there's only just a green chain, which we're not working into. We're just going to be working into these green double crochets in this round. So we're doing a double crochet here and 2 double crochets here, 1 and 2. And then we chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we repeat. So 1 double crochet here and 2 double crochets here, 1 and 2. And then we would chain 4 and continue making those groups of double crochets wherever you see those green stitches, okay? And then your piece will look like this. When you're almost done, I have one more to do. So 1, 2, 3, 4. There's our next 2 double crochets. So we're going to do 1 double crochet in the first stitch and 2 double crochets into the second stitch. 1 and 2. And we will make sure we have all of the orange yarn tails and everything coming to the front. Then we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, slip stitch into the first double crochet right here. And then we're going to elongate that loop. All right, and then we can switch back to the orange for round number 8. So far we've been switching between the orange and the green, back and forth and back and forth. So here in round number 8, we're going to chain 2 to start. That's not counting as a stitch. And then we're going to do a double crochet into the first stitch. And I am, again, just pushing the green to the back. We're just ignoring it and getting it out of the way. So 1 double crochet into that stitch, 1 double crochet into the next stitch, and then 2 double crochets into this stitch, 1 and 2, and then 1 double crochet into the following stitch. And then we're going to chain 2, 1 and 2. And then we're going to repeat. So we have 1 double crochet into the first stitch, 1 double crochet into the second stitch, 2 double crochets into the third, and 1 double crochet into the fourth. So we should have a total of 5 double crochets across each of these petals here. We're going to chain 2 and repeat. 1 into the first, 1 into the second, 2 into the third, and 1 into the fourth. Okay? And you're just going to continue that around your piece. Here, we're a little bit further along here in this one. And we'll chain 2, and here's our last repeat. So 1 into the first, 1 into the second, 2 into the next, and then 1 in the last. Then we chain 2, and then we're going to make a slip stitch in the top of the very first double crochet, which is right here. Okay, and so normally, so far we've been switching back and forth between colors, but here at this point, after working round number 8, we are going to continue with this color for one more round. So this is where we make the little rounded tips of the flowers. We're going to start by we're going to skip the first 2 stitches, and then we're going to make 6 double crochets into the 3rd stitch, okay, or the middle stitch of all these 5. So we make our double crochet right there in the center, so that would be the first one, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth. And then we make a slip stitch here into the last of those 5 double crochets, slip stitch. And then we chain 2, and we skip to the next petal. So we're going to slip stitch here. So we start by slip stitching in that first double crochet. Then we place 6 double crochets into that middle double crochet. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. Then we slip stitch into the last double crochet of that group, chain 2, and skip to the next petal. So we would start with a slip stitch, work our double crochets, end with a slip stitch, chain 2, okay? So every petal, you start with a slip stitch, then you do 6 double crochets, then you end with a slip stitch, then you chain 2 to get to the next petal. All right, so you just continue doing that around. And here we have one more petal left to work. So here's our first, second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth double crochets, slip stitch right here. Then we chain 2, and then we're going to slip stitch in the top of this slip stitch, which was the joining slip stitch from the previous round, the end of the previous round. So we're just slip stitching right there just to fasten off. So we're just going to go ahead and cut a little bit of a yarn tail so we can weave that in later and pull that through. Okay, so that completes round number 9. Now we're going to go back to the green for round number 10. All right, so round number 10. There we go. Round number 10, we're going to be working 3 single crochets, 1 into each of the next 3 double crochets right here. And you're going to work that around both of these chain loops here. So across this chain and across that chain to trap both of them. So I like to just place my hook underneath those first and then find those 3 stitches. You kind of have to tug a little bit in this direction to get into that very first one. You can count backwards as well. So 1, 2, 3. You're just making a single crochet into the top of the next 3 green double crochets. So 1, 2, 3, like that. And then we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And that has a tendency to want to sit in front of the petal when you're doing your next stitch, which is no big deal. So just let it do that if it wants to do that. And then you're going to find the next 3 double crochets and make a single crochet into each of those. Again, going working around those chains, those little chains just above. So there's the first one, and then we're going to pop the petal out in front of that chain that we just made. And then, actually, we're not doing single crochets here. Sorry. Let me back up. So we've got 4 chains right here, and we're going to begin working across these 3 double crochets, but we're actually doing a taller series here because this is the corner. So we're going to do 1 double crochet in the first double crochet. So that's right here. Again, working around those chains. So that's 1 double crochet, and then we're going to do 2 double crochets in the next stitch, 1 and 2, then a chain, then 2 more stitches into that same stitch. So there's a lot of stitches in this one middle stitch here. 1 and 2, and then another double crochet in the next stitch. And then we're going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're going to skip across to working single crochets in each of the next 3 double crochets. And again, you'll need to work around these 2 orange chains here. Or just, trap them in your stitch. So 1, 2, 3, and then chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to go back to the taller stitches. So you see, if you look at the chart, you can see we start with single crochets, chain across, then we do that group, that series of double crochets, chain across, single, chain across, double. So we're alternating between singles and doubles as we're working our way around here. Oh, we had a question. Can you please repeat the pattern if it's okay? Sorry, I didn't see that until right now. If you have a specific question about a round, I can kind of talk you through or go back to one of these samples if you remember what round it was in. But also you can always go back and watch, you can always go back and watch this later after we're done. You should be able to go back to any point in this video here. I think it'll be up for at least maybe a week. Maybe somebody can chime in here to let us know how long this will be available to watch for free. But if you're a member of the Creative Crochet Corner, then you can always watch that later. So you'll have that available to you. So we've got a chain 4. We're skipping across to the next group of green stitches, and we're going to do those taller stitches. So double crochet. And then in the middle stitch, we're going to do 2 doubles, 1, 2, a chain 1, and then 2 doubles, 1 and 2. And then in the next stitch, we're going to do a double crochet. Okay, so that's this little section of the chart. Actually, it's down here, same little section though. Okay, so that's giving us that little corner. You can see it's starting to form the corners here. So we've got singles, doubles, and you would just repeat that all the way around, just continue in that stitch pattern. And you'll have a piece that looks like this. And at the very end, I already did my join, but I'll back that up so you guys can see. So the last group is a group of those doubles. And then we chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to slip stitch into that very first stitch. So whether your chain ends up on the front or the back, doesn't matter as you're stitching it, but you're going to pull them all to the back after you've worked that round. And now we're going to start working in mostly single crochets around. So we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to do 1 single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches. So 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to make a single crochet into this chain space for the first time. So we're making 1 single crochet there. And then the next 2 single crochets we're making it around this chain as well, but we are also trying to snag the back of this petal to keep it in place because I don't like having a big hole here. So I want to trap that petal. I want to catch that petal so that we're eliminating the holes. So what we're going to do is we're going to grab just a couple strands at the center of that petal. Really, it should be in stitches 3 and 4 of those double crochets. If you want to count them, you can. But really, you just need to look at the back of your petal and know that you're going to make 2 single crochets where you're catching this. So you'll see You insert through, just catch a couple of those threads. Then you're going to go underneath that chain, grab that yarn, pull it through, yarn over, and pull through 2. So you're catching the chain and you're catching the petal. Okay, so we're going to do that again. So we're going to slip underneath just 2 strands of yarn. Try to make sure you're not going through the front. And then you're also going to duck under that chain space, grab the yarn, pull through, yarn over, pull through 2. So in that way, we're catching the petal, attaching it to that chain loop, and so we're keeping this motif from having big holes in it behind those petals and keeping the petals in place. All right, so now we're going to just work into that loop and make another single crochet. And then we're going to do a single crochet in each of the next 2 stitches, so 1 and 2. And now we're at the 3rd double crochet in this corner, and we're going to do a half double crochet. So half double crochet here. And then at that chain space, we're going to do a half double crochet, another double crochet, and a half double crochet. All right, so there are actually 4 stitches going into that chain 1 space. Then in your next stitch, don't miss it, try to scooch these over, but here's the top of the next stitch. There's a half double crochet here, and then a single crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. And now we've worked our way around to the next petal, so we're going to do a single crochet here, and we're going to catch the strands in the back of our next petal here. So just catch just 2 little strands of yarn here. Go underneath that chain, and then finish it off as a regular single crochet. Okay, so you're just inserting under 2 strands of yarn, going under that chain space, grab that yarn, pull it up, yarn over, pull through 2. And now here, we're just going to do a single crochet into that chain space right there, right there. Now I know this is a lot to remember, but thankfully you don't have to memorize this. You can, of course, you can refer to your pattern, refer to your chart, and come back and watch this video. I'm giving you a lot of information pretty quickly here, but you can always go back and look at it a little bit slower to catch up. All right, like when this is over, you can watch a replay. All right, so we're going to make a single crochet into each of the next 3 single crochets. Okay, and we've reached the next petal, so I'll show you how to do that again. So we're going to single crochet, and then we're going to catch the next 2 stitches, backs of the stitches, so 1 and 2, and working in that chain space. And here's our next double crochet. So we have single crochet, half double crochet, each into their own stitch. And now we're at that chain corner. So we're going to put 4 stitches in that corner. So we're going to do a half double crochet, 2 double crochets, and another half double crochet. Then we're going to do a half double crochet in the next stitch, and a single crochet into each of the next 2, and we've reached the next petal. So single crochet into that chain space, and then we're going to grab 2 strands and make a single crochet here, and grab 2 strands, single crochet here, and single crochet underneath that chain space. Single crochet into each of the next 3 stitches, 1, 2, 3, single crochet, single crochet, catching the back, just 2 strands there, 1 and 2, like that, and a single crochet right here. 2 single crochets, 1 into each of the next 2 stitches, so 1 and 2, then a half double crochet, half double, 2 doubles, and another half double, all into that chain 1 space at the corner. Then we have a half double crochet here, single crochet, and then we're going to do a single into this chain space, single crochet, catching that whoops, catching 2 strands of the petal. Same thing in the next stitch, and then a single crochet here. Okay, so you can see we're adding on to those corners here as we're working our way around. You've got single, 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 and then you're going to do that chain, you know, that working into the chain, working into the back of the petal, working into the chain, and working the corner and finishing up. So we're almost done with this motif, and you just do a join at the end. There's just two more rounds after you work this. After you finish this round, there's 2 more rounds where you can see it is all single crochets all the way around the next 2 rounds. Okay, so you're going to join at the end of those rounds, chain 1, which is not going to count as a stitch, and then 1 single crochet into each stitch until you get to the very corners. So if you look at your corners, you can see that there's a half double crochet, a double crochet, a double crochet, and a half double crochet. Remember, there's those 4 stitches at the corners. The 2 stitches in the middle each get 2 single crochets on the next round, okay? But other than that, it's 1 single crochet into the entire, you know, into each stitch around. And then the same thing happens on the following round. The 2 corners, the 2 stitches at each corner each get 2 single crochets in them, okay? So you're just adding, and you can see this in the chart, and it's also written in the instructions, but here, if you look at this double crochet, there's 2 plus signs coming out of it, and if you look at this plus sign, there's 2 plus signs coming out of that, okay? So you're gonna be just increasing on those corners, and that allows your corners to lay nice and flat and make that nice corner. And once you're done with that, you're going to have a piece that looks like this, okay? So you'll have all those extra rounds put in, and you're gonna make 2 of these. So you'll have 2 flower daisy motifs, and then you're going to whip stitch the edges together. So here I've got 1, and a second one, and I've already whip stitched this edge. I'm going to show you how to sew the opposite edge here. And then I'm going to talk you through those single crochet sections, okay? So that you know what to do. We won't have time for me to demonstrate all of those, but that's okay, because you have your complete instructions in your pattern, like how the stitch counts and all that, and it's really just a bunch of single crochets. Okay, so to do your whip stitches along the edge, I really like to do this in a contrasting color. Maybe there are some of you who, you know, especially if you're making your 2 pieces match each other, you may want to use a color that matches, and that's totally fine. I just really wanted this bag to look very patchworky and, you know, like handmade. So I kind of enjoy having a whip stitch in a contrasting color. So I'm going to be just going underneath both strands of each. Let's see, I'm going to move this over and start more at the corner. This will be better. I am just going to be going through both legs of each stitch, or a stitch from each side, rather. So I'm just going to kind of grab that and pull that through. There we go. And underneath 2 legs here, underneath 2 legs here, like that. 2 strands, 2 strands, 2 and 2. All right. So you just continue this all the way up one side, or both sides. And it should be a 1-to-1 ratio, but especially if you're newer at sewing things, it may help to take a stitch marker before you start sewing and just pin the corners, or at least pin the second corner that you haven't gotten to yet, and that'll kind of help keep you on track and make sure everything is matching up and you're not going to end up, you know, with a corner up here and a corner down there. Okay, so you would just whip stitch it all the way across, and then you will have a tube. And then once you have your tube, that's when you can work the bottom and the top rounds of single crochet. So to work the bottom, you'll actually have your purse upside down, but it doesn't matter so far which is the top and the bottom. And then you're just going to come into the corner and grab a strand of yarn. Let me pull up a contrasting color. So you're just going to grab a little strand of yarn here at the side edge, chain one, and then you can just start working single crochets across into each stitch. Okay, so you would work all the way across over here, have a single crochet here, and work all the way across. Now, I do have a stitch count. It's 50 stitches all the way around because there's 25 from each side of the motif, from each motif, I should say. But if you don't have exactly the perfect number of stitches, it's okay. You can kind of even that out. And when you do your decreases on the following rounds, because you can see this is kind of sloping inward, then you just have to make sure you have the same amount of stitches in between your decreases. If that doesn't make sense to you, then do try and get 50 stitches around, work one into each stitch around. And you're going to work a couple rounds even, and then you're going to start doing decreases on each side. So you will do a decrease here, single crochet across, a decrease here, you'll turn your bag, decrease here, single crochet across, and a decrease here once you've worked a couple of rounds. So if you don't know what a decrease is, I want to show you how to do that. In the pattern, it's abbreviated SC2 together, that's single crochet 2 together. And to do a single crochet 2 together, all you need to do is, actually, let me get across to the other, let me just start with that over here because it makes a little more sense to have it on the corner. So just imagine I've worked 3 or so rounds. I can't remember how many it is, but there's a couple of rounds before you start your decreasing. So when you start your decreasing, it'll say single crochet 2 together. So you just go in, grab that yarn, pull up a loop, go in the next stitch, grab that yarn, pull up a loop, yarn over, and pull through, okay? And then you're going to single crochet across to the other side, and then 2 stitches before the end of this side, then you will do another decrease. It tells you exactly how many stitches to work in between, so you can just follow that from your pattern. So when you get across, you should have 2 stitches left before that side edge of your bag. Do a couple more here. And then you would do another decrease. So you would insert, pull up a loop, insert in the next stitch, pull up a loop. You have 3 loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through 3. That would be a decrease. And then immediately you would do another decrease. So insert, pull up a loop, insert in the next stitch, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 3. So that would be another decrease. You'd work your way across and do another decrease. Then in the very last round, you're going to do 2 sets of decreases. And I've got a sample here where I've just finished doing that. So decrease, decrease. And then I am going to do 1 little slip stitch just to get myself over to the corner, and then you can slip stitch the 2 layers closed. So you're just gonna fold them, fold your bag flat and insert your hook through both layers and make those slip stitches all the way across your bag. Just like that to seam the bottom of the bag. So you'll go all the way across, fasten off, and weave in your end. And then the top of the bag is made in a very similar way. You're just going to join your yarn, work a number of rounds, until you change to another color. Then I did 1 round in this yellow. And then when I started the pink, I worked in the back loop. So when you're working your single crochets, instead of going underneath both loops like this, you would work your single crochets underneath that back loop. And the reason is it leaves the front loop free. It shows you where we're going to fold it, and it gives it like a little easy place for it to fold. It just wants to fold there. It makes it nice and tidy because this is going to be, this is like a self hem right here. And we're going to use this to insert our little pronged magnet fastener here. So when you're doing the top, you're going to start with 1 color, work a few rounds in that color, do another color, switch to what would be where this yellow is, do 1 round in that color. Then when you're doing the color that flips to the inside, that's when you work the very first round of that in the back loop. Leaves those front loops free. And let's see, I worked 4 rounds in this pink color. Okay, and that should match up when you fold it to the inside. Oh, I forgot to mention, after you do your very first round in the contrasting color in this blue, the second round, you're only working through the front loop. So if you're working through the front loop, you're just gonna work underneath this loop here, okay? So that happened down here, and let me show you. See how there's this ridge left over? It's because I worked in the front loop and that was the back loop that's exposed. So now, once we have this self-hem thing going on, we can actually slip stitch this edge to those open loops. That's what that's for. Okay, but before you do that, you want to insert your magnet. So we want that to be on the inside, on the pink. So I'm going to just kind of visually find the center of my bag and place those two prongs through, and you just want to make sure you can still access that loop, those loops, because you're going to stitch into those loops right here. That looks pretty good. And then we're going to place this backing piece on, and then you can use pliers if you want. I can just bend these with my fingers pretty well. So I push them in and then overlap that one. And then I usually just kind of press on the table. I'll have some paper on it though, so it doesn't scratch the table. You don't want to scratch your table. And just kind of press them together. So that kind of grips that magnet and holds it in place. And then you need to figure out where you're putting the back side of the magnet. And we'll have the same procedure here. So I just added the magnets to each other, just kind of folding, looking at where the edges of the bag are to figure this out. And then I'm going to separate my magnets. And then put the backing on. This is a very easy way to make a closure for a bag that doesn't require, you know, a zipper or sewing anything into your bag. So I'm folding those little prongs over. That one's a little stubborn. There we go. And then you can press it nice and flat like that. Okay, so now we'll have a magnet, fasten our bag, and then you can either whip stitch the edge to that those open loops, or you can do a slip stitch, which is what I recommended in the pattern. So if you want to do that, you would just kind of hold your bag like this, and then you can place your hook under the back loop of the working row and under whatever loop is directly below it. The exposed loops that we didn't work into, like this. And then you can just slip stitch this closed and work your way around. So just working, it should be a 1-to-1 ratio between your stitches. You should have the same amount of stitches in each, so you don't need to pin it. You just kind of need to start and work your way around, and then you'll have, that is basically seaming it in place. So it'll look like that. All right, so I need to just quickly show you how to work in that thermal stitch pattern. Let's see. I'll use this light green here. So to make the strap, we are going to start by chaining 4. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to work into the bottom of our chain, so that's opposite where all these little V's are. So if you see the V's, turn them over, and then you'll see these little horizontal dashes. That's where we're going to work. So we're going to do a single crochet into each of those chains. So 1, 2, and 3. Then we're going to chain 1 and turn like we're turning a page in a book. And now on our second row, we're going to go underneath just the back loop. Okay, so not under both strands like we normally do. We're going to go under the back loop, and then we're going to go underneath this loop directly below it. So this is how we normally hold our fabric as we're working into it. We're just kind of placing our hook further down. So we're gonna yarn over and pull through, yarn over and pull through 2. We're doing a regular single crochet, but we're just inserting our hook into an extra loop. So we're going in that back loop of the working row, and then just 1 loop from that foundation chain directly below it. Yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Insert into the back loop of the working row, and then the loop directly below from that foundation chain, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Then we chain 1 and turn. Now we're going to continue by working in that back loop and working in the loop directly below it. So on the back side of your fabric, I usually just kind of hold it flat like this so I can see the back at the same time. And we're just making those single crochets. Insert, and after you do the first one, it kind of brings your loops right next to each other, so it's easier to get your hook in there. So chain 1 and turn. So the back loop of the working row, and then that unused loop from the previous row. Because as I'm working this, I'm leaving a loop in the front exposed. We're going to be working into that loop on the next row, okay? So here's a single crochet, and another single crochet. We're just making single crochets. We're just inserting our hook in a different spot when we do that. So chain 1 and turn, back loop, the exposed loop from the previous row, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2. Back loop, exposed loop, complete your single crochet. All right, so as you are, it does take, extra time. It's almost like you're crocheting 2 straps here, but crocheting them together. So do expect that this is going to take more time than a regular single crochet. You can, of course, substitute with whatever kind of strap you want to make if you don't want to do it this way. But I highly recommend it because it really has it has a little bit of give to it, but not so much give that it's stretching out, which kind of drives me nuts. So that's why I have really grown to love making straps out of this thermal stitch. And we do have another video specifically on the thermal stitch on the Creative Crochet Corner website if you guys want to check that out. All right, so you just continue doing that until you have a nice, thick strap, and it's the length you want it to be. I do have a suggested length written in the pattern, so you can check with that, but of course everybody is a different size. Everybody wants their bag to hang in a different place. So, just try, you can pin it to your bag and try it on, but also put something heavy in it, whatever it is you're going to carry around, just because it is going to stretch a little bit, okay? So that way you can make sure that you really get it in the right spot. Okay, and then when you're done with your strap and you're done stitching this in, you would just place your strap right on the inside of your bag, and it should stick about an inch down into your bag, and then you're just going to do a whip stitch, and you're going to stitch all the way around the edge, across the bottom, and across this edge as well. Let's see if I can get a little bit stitched in here for you. I'll start with this side, just to kind of show you how to stitch through. And let's see, where did my needle go? Here it is. We are just about done. We're kind of running out of time, guys. Sorry, I was really trying to cram a lot of information into this live event here today. We had a question from Star Evie if this is easy for beginners. I would say it's not. This is not really a beginner project, but I hate to discourage anyone from trying this project. I really hate to do that. If you're a very curious beginner and you're okay with a little trial and error, then if it's something that inspires you, I think you should try it anyway. You can always go back and watch the video. You can slow it down. You can watch the same part over and over until it makes sense. It's not that what you're doing is physically difficult to do. It's just that this is, it's kind of an unusual stitch, and stitching in front of things and behind things, when we're doing that flower motif, it's pretty unusual. So that's why I don't recommend it for beginners. But if you are, if you just feel like you're an adventurous beginner, then why not give it a try? The worst thing that can happen is you have to unravel your yarn and use it for something else, right? And you've learned some things on the way. Okay, oh, okay. We have thank you for explaining this because I was definitely lost and have done graph patterns before. Okay, good. I'm glad that that helped from reading from the chart, a little bit of information about that, yeah. Oh, the yellow pattern rows. Okay, so if you are back at the beginning with the yellow pattern at the very beginning, the center of the circle, I would go back and watch that because that section is just very basic, putting single crochets into your magic loop. And if you need extra help on that, there's like a blog post tutorial on the Creative Crochet Corner website about making the perfect circle. That'll give you some help. But just know you're starting with 8 single crochets in the center. And then on the second round, you're doubling that. You're doing 2 single crochets in each of those 8 stitches, okay? All right. Oh yeah, and I see you'll go back and watch the video. Awesome, okay. Bella says, will there be a corrected version of the pattern later on? Yes, we will get that corrected, but just know there's just those 2 spots. One of them is just the width of the bag. The other one, you'll see when you get to that last round, what it really is from is when you're decreasing here, you'll see that you only have 13 stitches to work in between your 2 groups of decreases on that very last round. So it's 13 instead of 19 on that very last round of working the bottom is what that was. All right. Okay, thank you guys so much for being here and asking your questions, and I'll see you in another live event. Have a good day, everyone. Bye.